Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to a new video. I know, as per usual, it has been a while and I'm not even going to apologize. I haven't been focusing on videos that much lately, but here we are. Here's an extra super duper long one for you. Now in today's video, I'd like to take you behind the scenes, give you an over the shoulder look into my editing workflow, my photo editing workflow. Now I'm going to go through about 380 photos. I'm going to pre-select them for you. So there are remaining 70 photos that I'm going to be editing in Lightroom, and I'm going to just be doing it as I always do. So there's no hidden cuts, no hidden techniques, nothing is going to be hidden from you. And this is the behind the scenes look into that. Now, step by step, we're going to work through these photos. Now, this is not a step-by-step tutorial. There's no like how-to in this video, but if you know your way around Lightroom, you'll quickly understand how the processes and the effects and the settings I'm applying. Now, I do tend to waffle on a bit while I'm editing, and I will explain some of the things that I do, but it's not a tutorial. It's just an over-the-shoulder look. Today's photos are from a morning walk through Venice, a sunrise walk through the abandoned little alleyways of Venice, before and during sunrise. Now, I focused on, let's call it the ugliness, the grittiness of Venice, and it was not about capturing hero shots, but more about my little journey through Venice. I think I walked about 10 kilometers in that morning, just aimlessly through Venice, with the goal to capture the grittiness, the filthiness, and the liminal space, the emptiness of Venice. It's kind of eerie and kind of beautiful at the same time. So these are no hero shots. They're no perfect print them, put them on a book cover shots, and there's no client, no expectations. There's just what most photography is about, just enjoying the location and hopefully capturing that experience in the photographs that are collected along the way. So without further ado, let's jump into Lightroom. This is a very long video, so grab a cup of coffee, some biscuits, a tea, whatever is your drink of choice, and enjoy the ride. So here we are. First thing I'm going to do, we are going to gritty up this image. There is a bit of grain applied down here, but we're going to jump in and do a whole bunch. I'm looking at the sky mostly. This is a plain color field. It helps me determine. There we go. Now that might seem like a lot for a lot of you, but this is exactly what we're going for today. Gritty imperfection. Okay. Honestly, it's a good first shot. I'm happy with this. I'm going to go Command C to copy everything. I'm going to even take my aspect ratio. Everything was shot in 16:9, so it shouldn't change anything, but not the crop or straighten, just aspect ratio, and everything else can actually come along as well. Any local adjustments are obviously not done yet, masking or healing, so we're going to keep it like that. And copy. Jump into the second shot. I mean, I'll looking at it now, I don't really like the shot so much anymore, so maybe I'll take it down a star so it comes out of my selection. So there we go. Now this is looking the other way. Ooh, yes. I do love the grittiness in this. Always punch in so we get the full preview, size preview. And I might actually bring up a little bit of the exposure. Lower the contrast. And I kind of want more attention here. So by pressing Shift M, I get the radial filter, and we're going to do this here and maybe give it a... Welcome to Lightroom. This is the collection of 70 photos I pre-selected of 380 in total. Now, I used Photo Mechanic in my workflow. I've shot a video many years ago, and I still use the same workflow. If you want to know how I got to this starting point, please check out that video. This is not a one-to-one, step-by-step tutorial. I more want to focus on different aspects of photography and why it's not always that important to focus on settings and getting things right in camera, and more about, what's important in photography is capturing moments that you care about as a photographer, street photographer, landscape photographer, whatever it is, because an image of anything that you capture is sort of a reflection of your state of mind in that moment. And it's important to keep that in mind and not just capture something that represents, I don't know, something that's not you. Yeah, here we are. This was an early morning walk through Venice, as I mentioned, and to save myself a bunch of time, this is my workflow. I will jump into my presets, and I think I've already applied one here, so I'm going to show you the original. This is what my camera saw, and with this applied, show you what the image looks like with the preset. So here are my presets. They're not available publicly, but if you want access to these, let me know. Maybe we can figure something out. Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, let's get going. So here we are. We're in the Lightroom Develop module. I'm not going to change much. Looking back at the reality and what the preset does, I'm actually pretty happy. It does a nice color separation between the blue hues and the orange and reds. So we get a nice color contrast, which, you know, always works well to focus attention and make an image interesting. That being said, I do shoot in RAW, so I can change my white balance later on. And maybe I'm going to push a little bit to a warmer level. So yeah, there we are. That looks pretty good. And now, look, I can push up the highlights and shadows and bring my image and make it look like a postcard again, do something crazy like this. Bit of contrast and a whole bunch of saturation. And we've got ourselves a postcard shot. Looks great, but that's not what it's about. So let's go reset. Yes, yeah, so my reset actually brings me back to the 4:3 aspect ratio, but I'm a big fan of 16:9. I just love the wider aspect. I do shoot a lot of video, so that's where we go. We'll bring back the preset that I've applied before. And yeah, we are embracing imperfection today. These are not the most best settings for a landscape shot. Obviously, using a Micro Four Thirds sensor, f3.5, gives you still quite a bit of sharpness from front to back. So I do enjoy that aspect of the smaller sensor size. And, you know, the stabilization of the OM1 is really great to capture slow shutter speeds confidently. So I've just pressed M to get a radial, a gradient filter, and I'm going to bring down the sky a little bit. So just a little, maybe the highlights, that will just affect the sky. There we go. That looks good. Maybe we can bring out those chairs a bit and bring up the, well, so instead of bringing up exposure and creating this sort of circle effect, I do prefer to bring down the contrast a bit first and maybe a bit the shadows. There we go. Instead of using exposure, this brings the attention a little more to where we want it. So that's the before, which was slightly over, I would say, 1/30th of a second, f2.5, not much. So nice to bring it down a bit. And honestly, I think bring it in a bit, and it needs straightening, as every shot I capture needs straightening. I don't have a very straight eye. There we go. I love that. So my crop, I made sure this antenna up here isn't cropped off. For that, I gave up this corner here, but I do like the symmetry of it and the lines in this shot and the chaos, and yet there's an organization in here. So I consciously did the composition that every umbrella, except for this one here, that was maybe not the perfect shot, but had its space in the composition. I do like also that they're all different sizes. It really makes the shot quite dynamic. So we're going to copy our settings and go to this shot. Can't shoot an alleyway without a church top in the background in Venice. It's just impossible. They're everywhere. And yeah, bringing the leading line into the corner here. There's one here. That's quite nice. The bottom here also, that works really well. Maybe I can bring it out a bit. So let's do that. Compositionally, not the most exciting shot, but it's also not the worst. I'm going to start warming up the images a bit if there's no sunshine. Yes, people walking through the empty streets of Venice. Literally 7 a.m. If I press I can show you guys. 7:15, 7:16 a.m. And solitary people walking down the streets. I just copied in my settings, and as you can see, very dark. Now, my camera saw a whole bunch of things, so we can actually bring out a lot of these shadows, and we'd have to work on this. But hey, we're embracing the gritty, and we're going for contrast and composition, and sometimes dark areas like left or right of this shot here actually help with the composition. Now it's maybe a bit intense on the left here, so we're going to crop it in a little, and there we go. I do love the movement in this shot. The jacket of this person being so long really helps. Not the most pretty facade, but it kind of works. It's a gritty shot. So we're going to copy these settings, and I can see down here is the next one already. So let's quickly adjust my crooked line of sight, and I'm going to bring it down a bit. I do love the texture on the street here as well. So excellent stuff. Okay, let's jump to the next one. I've copied my settings, and here we are. Oh, yes, look at this. These beautiful empty streets. Solitary people, Italians, real Venetians having a chat. It felt like I was intruding on the real Venice that morning. It was quite special. Now I'm looking at my framing here. I do want to have the Venetian flag in there and bring as much ground floor as possible. And center it a little more on these guys. But yeah, that's good. Definitely too bright, so we're going to bring it down. The sky seems to be overexposed, but it's not all gone. So if I bring down my exposure, you see actually there is texture left in the sky. That means with a radial adjustment, I'm going to go up here and try and maybe recover a little bit of that. I don't want to blow out my skies. So here we go, not too much, there we go. And another radial adjustment around these guys here to bring in a bit of exposure, maybe like reduce contrast. And I do like the highlights. It does help pull your eye exactly to where we want it to go. And then another trick is to maybe bring in a gradient or a radial adjustment, a really big one, and bring it down here. All right, so we have sort of, we're affecting this bottom area, and we can bring down the exposure a bit. There we go. This helps create a gradient towards these guys. And this helps bring a little more contrast here. Oh, I deleted it. There we go. That's good. And let's see, maybe the white balance can be modified a bit. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Punch in to get the full feeling of it. The grain looks fantastic. The grittiness looks great. What we could do is maybe in this radial adjustment here, we can push a little more texture into the shot, a slight bit of clarity. And yeah, there we go. And then we have the before and the after. Quite warm, so we're going to bring down the white balance ever so slightly. There we go. That looks good. Jump into the next shot. I love this punch of intense pink, and try to incorporate it into my canal composition here with as many elements as possible. In the foreground, just filling the shot with as much as I could. I'm very happy with that. I'm just going to continue on. Not exactly my hero shot. This is a runner. So early mornings in Venice, you actually get the runners. Pasting my settings, bringing down the exposure, and might have to straighten that a bit. I know myself, I know my photography, and I know I have to correct every shot about 2 degrees in one way, usually. And there we have it. Maybe bring the highlights down a bit. I do think we need to go and create a bit more texture, and there we go. Maybe bring those highlights of the shop down a bit. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. And we're happy with this. We'll jump straight to the next one. San Marco Square. Here we go. Bring the exposure. Let's look back at reality. Yeah, it feels pretty close. Clearly a bit too dark. I loved standing here and waiting for people to come in and walk by. Gave me amazing opportunities to shoot silhouettes, as you can see in the next one, or even in the next one. Okay, I'm going to pick this one. I enjoy this one. I love his silhouette with the hoodie and the doorway, and sort of trying to frame as much as possible to tell the story of my perspective. And there we go. Looking good. I might actually warm this up a bit. There we go, yeah, that looks nice. Okay, so this is walking, you know, straight down the square and then to the right. For anyone who's been to Venice, you will know where we are. And here, as you can see, people are starting to move out of their hotels or moving into their hotels, usually out, I would say, at this time of the day. But there was a bit more going on. I didn't spend too much time here, but I could see the sun was hitting this morning. And it was seconds after the sunrise. So this is the very, very first light. And it's one of the spots where you will definitely see the sunrise. So, you know, people start to gather here. So we're going to paste our settings. First of all, we need to straighten out some of the crookedness that Chris likes to work into his photos. There we go. And I'll bring the exposure back to 0. And looking at my original and my edit, no, not too intense on the edit. It's just grittying up the image. I think I'll even go down a little bit in exposure, bring those highlights down a bit and the shadows down a bit. There we go. I do like her here, sitting here. She's clearly looking at me capturing the photo, but I do, just the way she sits in this dark little corner, like of all places to pick, why would you sit here? If you could go sit over there in the first sunlight. And yeah, the traveling people, beautiful. I'm going to take this and apply it to the next 2 photos. So in my brain, walking around here, so instead of like chasing the classic tourist shot, I'm looking at contrasts. My eye is always looking for contrast. What can I find? Color contrast, but much more silhouette and, you know, light and dark contrast. So we have a whole bunch of shapes happening here. If you follow along with my mouse, and these all happen against this bright sky, and you have these dark shapes against it, and it really creates interest, depth, and it creates a composition. And what really works well here is also the tiling, this beautiful tiling they have here reflecting the sky. So we even have contrast in the ground as well as here, and you know, your eye can wander around this shot for a long time and enjoy it. So what are we going to do? We might try and enhance a bit of that. So this tiling on the floor really is fun. So let's go here and maybe create, I think the clarity will probably, yes, clarity is the trick. And we'll pull it out a bit more. And there we go. And in general, the contrast in this shot is like what drew me to walking towards that direction. Okay, here we have it. Here's another one. You can tell it's not a perfect landscape, perfect streetscape, but I love this moment. There was a beauty to this place, a gritty beauty. Okay, I'm going to do the same here. I'll bring the clarity up on the tiling. That works well. Maybe actually, let's bring some saturation in there. Yes. To get that yellowness of the sky in there as well. And I'll work my way down my settings a little. Can we push the yellows maybe down a little bit? So the brightness of my yellows, I'll tweak them a bit. Before, after. It's good. Okay, I can see this woman down here taking a photo. Photographers, eh? And I'll crop her out. I'm very conscious about keeping this going in my shot. And my horizon's fairly centered, but if I look at my composition, okay, well, this might not work here. Shift O to cycle through a lot of these things. But the rule of thirds nicely applied here. But I actually shoot with the golden aspect ratio here with these. So it's slightly more specific rule of thirds. Now what we could do here in this shot as well is maybe adjust the transformation, so the distortion of the lens. Okay, so we've straightened out the lens distortion. Definitely have to bring this down here. This allows me to open it up a bit. And there we go. Okay. All right. That looks very nice. Very happy with that. Let's jump to the next one. Yes. Okay. I'm not too fussed by this shot now that I see it. I do like the airplane flying through and sort of the tiltedness of everything. Yeah, it works well, but it's not, it's not going to be a postcard. Oh, here we go. I remember walking around here. This is 3 shots later. What time of day is it? 7:29. I've been out for half an hour and now the sun hits. And now I have to pick. Do I want to shoot the beautiful sun along the water here with the boats coming by? Or do I go and look for street scenes? And I had seen all these walkers and runners in the little alleyways in the lesser known streets of Venice. And I was drawn to that a lot more than the sunlight and the crowds of tourists here. So crowds is a big word. There wasn't that much going on. But so here we go and apply the preset. We are happy with this. I'll copy my settings for this one. Apply them here. I love this. Let's try something funky and go to the crop tool. And being a cinematographer, I really, really love the 2:3:9:1 aspect ratio. I just have to be a bit careful here with the statue, not to crop him out. And again, I'm not going to bother correcting the distortion of the lens. We clearly have like leaning on both ends towards the center. Doesn't matter. What really, really drew my eye in this shot here, or in this location, was the lights capturing that sunlight, getting the first light of the sun and sort of glowing up, and the silhouette of these beautiful street lights. So we're going to copy this and see. Ooh, okay. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to take the line in, or are we going to go down and ignore that he's there? Ooh, yes. There we are. I do love the 2:3:9 here. Works well. For the sake of it, I'm going to do a correction, an auto correction on the lines, and bring it all the way down to see if that works well. The light, Venice. You're beautiful. I do love the shapes and contrast up here, and the people silhouettes almost throwing little shadows below them. Oh, this has to be one of my favorite shots of the morning. Is it because the sun is there? I don't know. Well, I'm going to copy my settings. Actually, let's take the aspect ratio out and make sure we stay in the 16:9. Much less exciting now. The sun's out. Later on, as you can see, I've walked on away from the sun, and I'm now shooting the lesser busy streets, although this is a busy street in Venice. This becomes very busy with all the restaurants opening up here. What I liked was this person sitting here, reading a book, I believe, or a newspaper. And obviously we have a problem here. Everything around them is brighter than they are, so I can try as much as I want to, but there's no way that I can make this look natural without like bringing out their features here, but then at the same time making it look real. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. I can maybe do a gradient from the top, pressing M, pulling down, bring some highlights down. It's okay. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because this person here is actually sitting in the darkest area of the shot, and I like to get attention to this, whereas like the contrast is flipped, so it doesn't work. So we will go ahead and look at this. Look at these empty alleyways of Venice. The classic 2-degree fix. Let's see. Can we bring the exposure down? Maybe create a bit more of a focal point. And shadows. I mean, it's cute, but it's not pretty. And oh man, the amount of dog walkers I saw in Venice, it sort of became this challenge to capture people walking their dogs and getting beautiful silhouettes of people, Venetians and their dogs. I do like her silhouette here, so we're going to try and bring that out. She does have a slightly brighter background behind her, so I think there's a way of... There we go. Everything, but not too much. There we go. Maybe bring those whites up a bit. That can also help. Okay. I think we're in a good place. This looks nice. Reality, the edit. It focuses the attention, but honestly, it wouldn't make you think that it's unreal. Beautiful color contrast with the blue boat and the Venetian flag hanging up here. Let's bring that out again. As you can see, I love radial filters. They are, in my opinion, the best way to focus attention in areas. This is good. This is good. This is nice. Let's continue. Okay, here the highlight control has obviously taken over and taken all the attention away. So I'm going to, well, not the attention, but it's got the control of most of the image here that I don't want to be using the highlight control here. So I'm just going to bring out the exposure, maybe bring down that highlight a bit. I do love this, the light catching on the metal here, and this perfect gradient between the brightest and darkest area. Let's bring up the exposure and see what happens. Okay, so left and right's not so great. Oh, we have someone sitting here. Obviously my intention was to capture him, but without getting in his way. Now, can we bring him out without it looking unnatural? Oh, yeah, we're getting somewhere. Again, bring down exposure can go a long way. Yeah. Okay, there are some weird green tones going on, so let's see if we can fix that with the tint and temperature. But there might also be something happening here in my split toning, or my color grading as they call it now. But it's fine. The highlights are going to blues and the shadows to yellows. Maybe we can get away from that. I'm actually... No, it's fine. There's not that much I need to change here. Let's go back to the reality. Why not? With our radial adjustment, we can obviously change the white balance here too. Maybe bring in some magenta and cool it off a bit. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Okay, we're going to continue with these settings. I walked to the other end, not so busy end of Venice. Whoa. Gonna reset my exposure, bring it up maybe a tad. And I feel this is a shot that needs a 2:39:1 crop. I do feel it. But now looking at I'm gonna copy my aspect ratio here. Looking at the next one, I feel, yes, here we are. That's the one that deserved it. Actually, you know what? Let's go 16:9. Here we are, 16:9. Bring out everything. There we go. That gradient here is something I love. It really, it helps you, guides you into the shot, into the composition, and I think it's great. I'm going to change my information so you guys can see the settings of my shots. Sorry if I had that off for a while. And we're going to do this and maybe, just maybe, get a bit of texture into these shots. Not too much. I don't want it to look too edited, too crazy. But there we go. I'll drop the clarity. It's too much. But yeah, this looks nice. Very nice. I'll copy that, get rid of my aspect ratio, and back to, ooh, there we have it. A sunshine shot. Oh man, the settings are working so well. But it's normal, right? The lights and the environment, the colors, the textures, all these are consistent throughout these images. The light is obviously changing, but the quality of light is the same throughout. And so the settings will work. Now what we really want to avoid is, so I'm going to show you the original. We have obviously overexposure. That's totally normal if you're shooting the sun, is to create a harsh overexposure transition. So what I'm happy to let it blur out to a point. Maybe we can bring in the whites ever so slightly, not too much. But this helps us bring the whiteness of the sun, make it not 100% white and have it look nice. Okay. Do we like this or not? I'm going to bring it down a little bit on warmness. Let's look at the original. Wow, yeah, so much yellow. Let's see if we can get a bit closer to that. I think it's also me pushing the yellows towards orange earlier on that might have affected this. How about that? I do enjoy that. I'm more of a desaturated kind of look guy, photographer. But let's bring down the exposure a bit more. There we go. The trash collection I think is really awesome. So this is something we need to bring out. There we go. Fantastic. Another runner at the emergency dock. I need to correct my tilt a little bit. Not my tilt, my rotation. And I'm happy with this. Looks good. Move on. This is the cigar boats. This is definitely a 2:3:9 shot. I actually shoot a lot of my work with that aspect ratio in mind. Just being a cinematographer, filmmaker gets me there. There we go. And I feel like we can probably warm up the exposure. That looks pretty good. So this is the raw image. This is the edit. Let's bring in this side a little bit. I don't like these foamy bits down there. And a radial adjustment to bring in, maybe we can work on the boat. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Original, edit. Super gritty, super quick. Another one, beautiful. I waited for this person to walk up the steps and I knew the sunlight would hit them. Wasn't sure which direction it would take, but I went for a quick shot the moment the light was hitting them, and there we go. Again, in my composition here, or in my re-cropping of my 4:3 aspect to a 16:9, I'm looking for elements in the corners that could have been potentially cropped off by shooting in a bit lower or higher. So I kind of reframe it a little bit like this. There's no need to go too far. I do enjoy this area down here. So let's bring the elements. I do like the wall here too. So it sort of brings the weight of the shot. Keeps it in balance. Okay, well, Crooked Chris. Here we go. Fix that. Actually, maybe took it too far a bit. There we go. Happy with that. This is some sort of boat yard dock. Let's even out the composition a bit, or the brightness. Bringing down the sky a tad, maybe the highlights. Not too much. And a radial adjustment in the middle where we want the focus to be. Oh, look at those beautiful red and white striped pillars in the water, for lack of a better word right now. And there we go. Looks pretty nice. Let me copy those settings and apply them. Oh yes, the birds, classic. Why not tilt it more? Let's see. I do like the tilt. Imperfection. It helps. The birds have this direction to the right, and I think by... Let's go this way. We give them more room. I know. Kill me. The horizon isn't straight, but this works. This works really well. Let's go and bring down the exposure. A bit of contrast. And how about we drop the saturation a bit? So original, edit. Hey, this looks nice. Let's go and get our birds. and bring in a bit of clarity. A tiny bit and more texture. Yes. Love it. Let's zoom in. Oh yes, they look great. I love that they all have their own place in the image. On to the next one. Here my shutter speed was not high enough. 1/400th of a second. These birds were really fast. And I panned along to keep the birds in focus. Keep them, try and follow along as they flew by. It ruined everything else in the background. Well, ruined. It created a lot of motion. If I paste my settings, I don't know. It's too cliche. Let's get away with it. And here, I would believe this is her daughter helping her along the street. And I just thought it was so cute. Copy, paste. Yeah, I don't know. Aha, here we have a beautiful mix of morning sunlight hitting the two canals, or the split of the canal. Beautiful sunlight punching through. I think we're going to have to bring up the exposure, but let's do it regionally somewhere here. I feel like it's missing exposure, so it's too much. Do I like the shot? I mean, it's kind of cool. We got some Venetian flags, some canals, some bridges. Why not? Copy the settings, move on. Nice and gritty. Looks, maybe let's crop away even more from the square and have just this. It doesn't feel so balanced, so let's skip ahead and go to the well-placed Venetian flag. They're everywhere, so they're just fun to capture. As you can see, we have nice texture. Focus is clearly on the flag. I'm going to make my zoom 100%, not 400. There we go, and there we have it. So 100%, maybe 200%, because I am on a big screen, and it just doesn't make sense to have much less than 100. Okay, let's bring a radial adjustment in, and I think I'm going to bring out some shadows. It's more for the background than it is for the flag, but it works really well. This is beautiful. Copying. Ah yes, a lost dog in the morning hours in the streets and alleys of Venice. Let's spin this in here, and we can get away with quite a bit of a radical adjustment here because the light source is unknown and the quantity of the light source is unknown, and it works, as you can see. Yeah, someone in running clothes smoking a cigarette in the early mornings on a square. Clearly my settings are too warm for this, so let's bring it down. There. Look, let's come back to, imperfection and grittiness. The grain is obviously adding an awful lot of texture to these shots, but the grittiness, I mean, the imperfection of losing details in shadows, having complete blackness. If you look at my histogram up here, most of my things are losing detail. If I hover over here, and highlight wise, I don't lose so much. I could bring this shot more into balance, but the reason I shot this was because the sunlight was hitting him and he had a beautiful shadow casting here, and there's a bit of a sunlight situation happening everywhere in the shot, and the shadows didn't interest me. They're actually just shapes, and I these shapes here, for example, and the contrast on the sign and the shapes between light and dark here, that's what drew my eye in that moment. And obviously the color contrast of him being blue and everything else being yellowish, even in the original, this is what drew me in, the light on him, right? And pushing that contrast to get more attention, more of that is exactly what I'm here to do today in Lightroom. Okay, here another dog walker and the person in the background, but it's mostly about this. I used some of the grittiness, the ugliness of Venice to help my composition, draw your eye towards him, And here we have a beautiful contrast situation. So I'm going to paste my settings. Clearly too dark, so we're going to bring that up again. The sign down here is kind of annoying, so I think I might, well, let's go like this. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay, again, we want to emphasize the contrast here and maybe get his dog into the shot a bit. There we go. We can pull this out a bit more. Maybe, just maybe, get the shadows to come out. Does it matter that we can see the dog or not? He's just too many dark areas around the dog. So let's stick with this. Maybe bring in a gradient filter and darken down this corner a bit. There we go. Now next, I would look at my white balance. Are we in a good place? Maybe warm it up, cool it down. Not so sure. It kind of all works. And it's beautiful, and light just works well. This is literally walking down the street that, so you can actually see the person sitting here once it loads. And I saw the light catching on her, the beautiful sunlight in this coffee shop. But I didn't realize was that this is like a Starbucks or something ridiculous. So, you know, Captain Candy shop is maybe not the prettiest, most Venetian style place to be, but man, the light, whew. Well, that's a bit overcorrected, I would say. Let's go here. That's pretty cool. Two girls walking up to their coffee and someone here sitting there and enjoying their coffee. Fantastic. But yes, not so amazing. And I just absolutely, I consciously saw the shadow of the seagull here. And yeah, now that the sun was out in this place, it was a lot more fun to look for, you know, actual real shadows, not just gradient shadows of lighter and darkness, but actual shapes in shadows. And I love the, you know, everything's a little bit crooked and falling apart. There's trash lying around. It's literally what this place looks like in the morning. I think because we've got sunlight hitting here, we can actually bring down the temperature a little bit to come to a bit more of a reality. Boy, you see the yellowness of this sunlight is crazy. I'm going to desaturate it a bit, as you can see. And yeah, okay. Coming up, one of my favorite shots. This guy was preparing the restaurant, dialing in something on the screen. Yeah, everything just being here is fantastic. With the menu out, I think it's not a perfect shot. It's a bit out of focus. Not out of focus. I think my shutter speed was too slow. Shooting this while walking by, you know, in a matter of a fraction of a moment was didn't give me much time. Okay, so here we go. The famous Italian breakfast, highly not recommended. Let's bring in. Okay, I'm looking at the general exposure. I know that I can recover him here, so should we recover him? Should I bring him out, or should we live with his hands and his face being in the shadows? I kind of like this. Lots of light is bouncing off the street below and coming back up again onto the wall compared to the top. So if we look at the shadow here with the roof, there's probably some overhanging shadow thing here, and at the bottom we have pure sunlight bouncing in. So let's darken that down, bring those highlights down, and we can get our attention where we want it, which is in the center. Okay, loved it. I'm going to copy my settings and go on to the next one. Yes, old man sitting in squares, talking to everyone because they know every local, and talking about life and weather and what's happening since yesterday morning. And here we are, brightening up a little bit. So as you can see, I didn't actually do this. I could, but I feel like that you can feel that this was adjusted. But where the light really is here, and it creates an even bigger gradient from the tables, the texture here, to him. And I kind of like that. There we go. He's almost a bit in the shadows. Now, if we were like really desperate to make this an epic shot, we could definitely get rid of his Adidas. Honestly, Lightroom is really not playing well with me this morning. You'd think I know how to use this tool. There we go. That's cool. We could get rid of the lines too, but we'll keep it where it is. Nice. I like it. I do love the light on the chairs. Okay, let's keep going. 50 of 70. We're almost through. Again, same guy, different direction. That's Venice for you. It's not just pretty in one direction. It's pretty in all of them. I'm going to punch in to get the full size preview. And again, this is not a technically perfect shot. It seems to be out of focus ever so slightly. Or focus seems to be rather short on the front end here. But you know what? If we maybe drop this down a bit, we get more of the focus area in shot. And it's quite nice. Again, let's bring out his area here a little bit. I'm going to be so gentle with this. There we go. That's enough. I don't want you to spot him immediately. I want you to look at this shot and you're drawn to the church, whatever's here, and then you start exploring and you realize there's some old guy sitting there by himself. It's the discovery that matters. And as you can see, 2 seconds later, we have 2 extra people in the shot. If I jump onto my preset here, this could be a 2:3:9 shot, 2:3:9 to 1 aspect ratio. Super wide, I know. Sorry, OM system Olympus, for chucking away many of the pixels your cameras produce. But it's just the way I like my crops. There we go. That's quite fun, isn't it? Okay, take that and go to the next one. And this is me just following this bald, semi-bald guy. I have to straighten up my shot. The light was just beautiful on him at times, or on his head. And let's jump in. Again, you see, this ain't perfect. We're shooting at f2, so we're definitely losing a bit of sharpness. But I love the way he looks in this. And honestly, I might brighten him up a tad. There we go. Which then allows me to bring down the exposure. And also we have to cool off this image a bit. There we go. There. Love it. I actually followed him for a while. That's him on the right. Not shooting a million photos of him, but quite a few. And here we have it again. This is me looking for shapes and contrast of light. This guy sitting here on his phone. The benches contrasting well with the white background. Obviously these super light buildings, white colors, bright colors, reflecting the sun, bouncing back, gives you so much shape and silhouette. Anything that isn't hit by this or that's backlit by this is then so contrasty. So if we look at the original, there is a bunch of contrast happening here. So it works well. I think we could, again, here, create a bit more attention in the foreground. There we go. Not too much. Bring the contrast down. Yeah, fantastic. So this is a whole bunch of things happening in one shot. And personally, my compositional goal is always to create, if I'm shooting street or landscapes too, is to, how would you say? I would say organize the chaos. Find as many elements as possible and arrange them in a way that they all have their spot in the composition. So if, nothing is overlapping. It's a clean collection of elements in the shot that keeps your eye interested and keeps your eye wandering throughout the composition. All right, let's bring down that a bit. I think a bit of warmth. I do like the warmth on the tiles on the floor. So there we go. Nice. Jumping in, classic, putting the, here we go. If I go to my crop tool, you can see my composition, putting this in the bottom left and having everything else help the eye, guide the eye that way. I think we could maybe bring out the exposure a bit, or maybe a bit of the shadows. Looks great. And we continue. Yes, the yellow watering can, isn't that cute? Bringing back my exposure a bit. I know myself and my crooked hands. That's kind of cute. Not compositionally, maybe not the most interesting. It's like slap bang in the middle almost. So not a keeper necessarily. Let's jump on to the next. Okay, let's jump to the next one. This one here, we starting getting nice reflections. Classic. Every photographer is always looking for reflections. And I am no different. It drew my attention. I love the ripples, breaking up those reflections. And still, we are all very aware of what's happening here. That those are light reflections. Happy with that. Not necessarily the most happy, but here we go. This is what's happening in the morning of Venice before the millions of tourists descend onto this beautiful city. People are working, cleaning the place, making sure that you all have, or we all have, a nice experience. So it was quite fascinating watching the trash being taken out, because Venice is, there's no vehicles, so it all needs to be swept up, collected, and then boats come along and pick up the trash. Here we have it. There you can see the trash being collected. I kind of watched for a while and thought it was fascinating. Also, nice depth to the shot, I would say. We have a nice foreground element and, something where there's a story here. The boat is loading up the trash and it's definitely going to be heading that way once it's done here. So let's bring up the exposure. There we go. The cat, the lone cat walking down the Venetian streets. Or a dog, maybe. I don't know. Looks like a chicken. Let's stick to the darkness, embrace the darkness and the light glowing in. This is clearly already a bit later in the morning. Here, almost 9 o'clock, so the light's becoming way too harsh to actually work with for those morning shots. But what I like to do is bring in a bit of haze into this and maybe bring the exposure down a bit. And that brings in a bit of glow. So if I turn it off, on, so it gives us a tiny bit of glow. And that's it for this shot. Let's sweep on the white balance, maybe a bit of warmth. There we go, and happy with that. Here, a book, newspaper stand being opened up. He was just lifting up all those things. Fantastic, isn't it? Just a bird flying away. We have a ferry just docking on in the background. One of the bridges. And some people standing up there. Cool composition. I couldn't quite fit everything. So let's bring down the exposure. Well, I could actually fit it, but in my 16:9 composition, it won't fit. Now, do we want to do this? No. What I really came to see was his silhouette against the background. And I think that's what we caught here. Okay, there we go. That's the view from the other bridge that crosses the main canal. This is the postcard shot, isn't it? I'm going to go 239 to 1. As you can see, losing a whole bunch of my composition, but punching in, let it load. There we go. I like the dirtiness. I like that it's not perfect. It's F9. My focus is on, but yeah, the lack of, not the lack of it, but adding all this grain takes away a bit of that sharpness, and it definitely adds a certain atmosphere to the shot. Now, should we lift up those shadows and make Venice look like a postcard again? I don't know. Give me those silhouettes, give me that shape, the blackness here that wanders into the composition, to the church in the background or cathedral. And there we go, happy with this. Ah yes, this wonderful flower store, all steamed up from the plants overnight. Love this place. I'm gonna go 239 to 1, and let's do the whole gradient thing where we come from the bottom, pull it down. I'm gonna pull down the exposure, and we're going to bring in a bit more attention to the store. Maybe the highlights can bloom out. Contrast down. Okay, feels quite yellow, so let's go. There we go. That looks fantastic. I love the steamed up shop. And yeah, the flowers about to be set out onto the street to hopefully sell throughout the day. Life has happened now. So here we have some Venetians sitting in the square. I'm going to jump ahead to the next one. I can see my thumbnails down here. This guy was reading the newspaper, man. Where do you still see old men reading newspapers on the square of a town? So you can see the dynamic range of the OM1 is not bad, right? We do get the details everywhere. I did not lose anything in this shot. So I'm a big fan of retaining highlight detail. So we're going to try and keep the highlights, whatever is happening over there on the buildings. But then we've, of course, lost him. So the bottom half needs brightening up. Let's do this a tad. Yeah, not too much. And then we're going to go specifically onto him now that the exposure feels a little more balanced. Bring that contrast down ever so slightly. We don't want to create like a halo around him. So there we go. Bring those shadows up. And again on my gradient, so I press M for that. Where did my gradient go? Here. Maybe because the shadows are cooler, we can warm them up a bit. And that gives us the opportunity to balance out the shot a bit more. And now if I move the white balance, it works for the whole image. But that's it. Again, why not add a bit of texture and grit to him here? This works. Fantastic. Copy. Paste. Okay, this is me holding the camera overhand to get the best possible vantage point of him. I did not ask for the photo, so I was sort of stealing the moment. I just thought it was fantastic. Should we reduce it to nothing? It's kind of cool too. Let's get rid of the background. And I'm looking at the top right there, making sure those chairs don't slip into the composition. How about this? Not bad, not bad. Let's go and create, again, texture clarity around him. Again, I'm going to punch in. You'll see there is the details there, right? So it's not like we are ruining the shot by doing that. And maybe, just maybe, let's bring a bit of post-crop vignetting in. Not too much. And look at the original. Now, oh, yes, fantastic. Copy those settings and apply to the next one. Bringing the exposure up with shift plus or minus, I can jump, or just in small increments. And I do like the birds, which is the reason I shot this photo, is the silhouette of the birds. There we go, pigeons. And I feel we can push some more warmness into this. There we go. Happy with that. Continue on to the next. 5 to go. It's not just old men reading newspapers in Venice. Or in Italy. I don't know. There's other places in the world, of course, where this happens, but I love the situation of her dog walking, her overweight dog with the ball. He couldn't care less about a pigeon walking by, and she just stood there reading the newspaper. I wish I could have done a better composition, but I did not want to disturb her moment. That being said, how about we go 239 for this one? And definitely bring down that warmth a bit. So it's very warm in the original. We can keep some of that, I feel, but let's bring in a gradient from the bottom, and we're going to do the opposite of what we did before. We'll cool it down a bit. There we go. And again, a radial adjustment around her. And I'm going very generous, so the gradient to the left and right is very smooth. Again, can we cool them down a bit? Bring those highlights up and the shadows down, and I can bring up the exposure. Ooh. See, I gotta be careful. You don't want to do this. So where we lose, where we start seeing too much of the radial adjustment. And let's pull up a gradient from the top, a really, really gentle, mellow gradient, and we drop the exposure ever so slightly. Okay, original, edit. There we go, very happy with that. Copy and paste. Ah yes, the gondolieri getting ready for a day's work of shipping tourists around the canals. And if you're ever in Venice, do it. It's cliche as it might be, it's fantastic seeing the streets from a different perspective from the boats. And they do give you some interesting information, so yeah. Go to Venice, go in a gondola. Okay, are we happy with this? Yeah, we created a tension. You see my editing style has become very simple, very matter of fact, and enhancing of the experience I've had, the things I saw, and in a very not overdone way, right? Less is more. Ah, fantastic. The sun throwing these shadows here. We have the sun coming in off the top there, but let's go here. And I think we can bring up the exposure a little. The silhouette of the gondola with the sunlight just giving it a bit of a rim and edge light, and the shadows and the texture, fantastic. A whole bunch of tourists already lined up here. I'll bring up the exposure so you can see it. So nothing as it might seem here in this shot. Up here it was really quiet, but walking around I was starting to be fed up with the amount of tourists around, so that's my face after it, which my partner shot. So there we are. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little workflow and how I edit my photos, my street photos. And yeah, let me know if you're interested in the presets. I can offer them on my website if there's enough interest. Okay, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go back onto the couch. Now, I know this was a long video. If you've stuck it out all the way to here, congratulations, well done. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you learned something, and if you did, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave me a comment down below, especially about the presets. If you're interested in those, let me know. I can add them to my website. You can download them and use them for your own photography. Yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll make another one in the future, and yeah, see you there. Thanks. Ciao.